We're back. I actually changed it this time with Season 8, Episode 26, School Raze Part 2. This is the big finale, not written by Nicole. This is actually written by Josh Haber. Josh Haber is probably our second golden boy in terms of writers. His list is just a giant block of red and purple. I'm pretty sure the only one who surpasses him is Larson, and actually Haber's written more episodes, so that's something to keep in mind. Anyways, even the recap doesn't really focus on Cozy Glow. Did you catch that? Instead, the recap mostly focuses on Naysay. So they're in Tartarus, and the 6 of you are trapped in here. The 7 of us. Thank you very much. They make a comment that Starlight is at the school. Now, let's be clear. Starlight is not stupid. In fact, she did an entire adventure where she didn't have magic. So it's not like she's incompetent. But let's be clear. Starlight is a sorceress. Her big shtick is the raw magical power she has. She's very good at it. It's been her thing pretty much since she was first introduced. In fact, I was thinking about this because my mind's been on D&D lately because I've been... I was wondering who would be hurt worse by just spontaneously losing all their spell slots. A sorceress or a wizard, right? And unfortunately the answer is it depends. Anyways, so they're quite stuck, but then they think about borrowing magic from magical creatures. We'll come back to that. This is when the episode finally starts doing something in animation that they haven't done in any episode prior to this one with Cozy Glow. She starts doing the aiscances. So let me explain what I mean by that. I actually brought this up during Father Knows Beast. One thing fiction likes to do a lot of is give a hint at what someone's actually feeling for the audience. No one else notices. No one else sees it. It's entirely 100% for the person behind the screen, right? You know, it's you're like, ha ha ha. You know, that kind of a thing, right? You know what I'm talking about. You've seen it a bajillion times before. It's a very common thing. Now, I admit, I kind of don't like those kind of things. I don't like those kind of aiscances because it feels like it's unnecessary most of the time. I can usually pick up on what's happening. I don't need the audience. I don't need the person to effectively look at the audience and say, hey, I'm just kidding, wink. And in fact, the term winking to the audience is a form of this to continue the concept. But I bring this up because one of the things I've noticed is Cozy Glow hasn't had any aiscances at all. It's actually part of why I think her character works so well, is that she's just maintained the facade the entire time. My personal favorite time is, and we've talked about this, is when she actually gets access to the Tree of Harmony, and she's just smiling. There's no evil, there's no sinister, just, okay. As it should be. Anyways, so she starts doing this a lot in this episode because, you know, now she doesn't have to keep up the thing. Or more accurately, now we, the audience, know that she's evil, so she can openly be portrayed as being evil. That being said, I do have to point out that this is still good writing. Or, I guess, directing in this case. Because she only ever does it in circumstances where things have not gone right. Which, again, fits her personality to a T, as we've already discussed. She's completely in control and completely on top of everything up until the moment at which something goes wrong. That's when it slips, and she gets, ugh. And she always gets angry because it's something in her way, because all she cares about is herself, right? So it's actually still in character, and I'm willing to let it go. So, Cozy puts a real effort into this whole thing, does some good stuff. There's a nice little tidbit, by the way. They actually mention this, that because they're cut off from magic, they can't just summon reinforcements on a whim. That's actually a very common, very old trope. It's so old, in fact, that modern horror movies have a really hard time trying to, make up for it. It's the phones don't work situation, right? You're lost in the woods, and you can't just, pull out your smartphone and be like, hey, help, I need help. No, it's you literally can't get help. You are cut off, right? And again, modern technology has kind of invalidated that, and honestly, sometimes some movies have no idea what to do with that. But you get the concept, right? Cutting you off from support is something that a writer needs to do because in most scenarios, in most settings, if you have access to support, then you win. This is not hard to understand. If you are in Faerun and you have the ability to cast Sending to Elminster, you're fine. If you are in Star Trek and you can just get a hold of Starfleet Command and have another ship there inside of 5 hours, you're fine. So you got to cut them off. And that's the thing. You actually have to do work. And I think that the whole magic draining thing does work in this case as this narrative trope of being the cutoff. This is why they can't just go reinforcements. We even see later on that they have gone and they are walking with several of the Royal Guard, the newly trained Royal Guard, by the way, and the princess is on the way there because that's what they've got to do. That's the only option. But at least he did make it, and at least they are doing what they can. Nice touch. It also does mean help was coming, consequently. Yeah, so that works. That's pretty good. It's a good MacGuffin, I want to say. Now, several people in chat mentioned this previously. Apparently not Echt, because they didn't take the train there. Unless they just didn't think they could all fit, but I don't think that tracks. I would imagine the trains don't work anymore. That just sounds logical to me, because most of their technology seems to run on magic. Other than, like, really basic stuff like fire. The words gone. Oh, right. Some people were questioning the stupidity of Cozy Glow's plan. I'm actually kind of with you on that, because it feels like her plan was essentially get to this point in order to get rid of the people in my way, then take over, and then win there. I'm actually with Raskor on that. While her plan is half-baked, it is extremely well-baked up to the halfway point. It really feels like she put all her time and effort onto getting to this point and just hadn't really figured out what was going to happen next. And it is very worth noting that she absolutely thought she could still manipulate everyone, because she still does this in the finale, in the climax of the episode, when she's trying to throw on her mask for the main six, despite everything. And when she's trying to convince the school people, despite everything. Now, she does have a very high charisma score, and I'll bring that up in a minute too. But there's a problem with that, and I'll bring that up in a minute too. But let's move on from that. I would agree, by the way, the plan was very much T-Rex. She was just borrowing it for her own purpose. Since her plan was to gain lots and lots of friends. And, well, friendship is power, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, so, this leads to the scene which I think Echt was asking me about. This is when they're okay, so they're in the room, and they're like, maybe Sandbar actually just, went against us, maybe he didn't. I think this is more of an absence of a positive than a negative thing, and it goes down to the specific details. This would be a positive if they were like, yeah, I'm just waiting for Sandbar to come back. And then, and they're figuring it out, right? And it's like, okay, well, it's going to be a minute. What if he doesn't come here? What if he didn't make it? Oh, God, that's a good point. The reason it's not a full negative is because not all of them doubted him. And if I'm being honest, speaking personally as well, I will say that it's really easy to doubt even something you believe in firmly or know firmly when doubt starts to creep in, right? How many of you have ever seen me when I say such and such, and then I immediately question myself, like, wait, hang on. And then I go and double check and like, yep, nope, I was right. It's that kind of doubt. And when you're, in circumstances like they are, it's really easy to doubt people, right? So, that being said, I do think it's definitely an absence of a positive, because if they were just in on the plan from the beginning, that's awesome, because that means they were trying to sell the thing from the word go, and were effectively in on it by knowing each other well enough in order to be on top of it. That would be great. But I don't think I would ding the episode for it, because of the fact that some of them are stuck in a room alone, waiting, scared. Doubt. So, either way, that is going to drag the first episode down slightly, because that's a positive that doesn't exist now. Anyways, so, okay. They're there. That sucks. And then the episode does something I'm not sure about, and it's going to cover this more later, but what they do is they start to redeem Naysay. That's what this is. Let's just call that what it is. This is not a Sylvanas scenario where there's no redemption and people are dumb for thinking that. No, this is actually them trying to redeem Naysay. Okay. Now, what happens is he goes and he does his usual seemingly villainous speech, but once again, I love that they pull this trick again. If you divorce yourself from the tone, what he's saying is, we're going to make things right. We're going to make things work. We're going to fix things. This will be a school run the way it should be. And that's his words. His tone is wrong, of course, because his tone is villainous, because he's a bigoted idiot. But if you, once again, if you divorce yourself from the presentation and look at the text on the page, what you have is, this is going to work. We're going to, and he's doing, he believes himself, I guess is the simplest way to put it. I know that doesn't make it better, but it is an important distinction. There's a difference between the zealot who believes what they say and the pretender who doesn't. So, I agree, it's a damn good cutscene, Mr. Red. Anyways, honestly, Shadowlands has a lot of really great cutscenes, which is true in every expansion. Warlords has some great cutscenes, BFA has some great cutscenes. But yeah, he's the opposite of Cozy, but still, actually no, he's the inverse of Cozy, excuse me. Same concept, but different expression. Cozy naturally turns this around on him with nothing but facts. Just works right through him. I believe you when you say we're going to shut this school down. I believe you when we're not going to do things according to her thing. And then she just rouses the crowd up really, really easily. Oh, in that, yes, I'm sorry. In that way, he is absolutely the opposite of Cozy. Because Cozy doesn't believe anything she says. She doesn't care. He really believes what he says. Which is interesting in its own right. But we'll get to that in just a minute. So, because I do have a topic about that. I want to talk about that topic because it relates to Star Trek and the Star Trek rewrite, actually. So I hope to talk about that as well. I hope you'll forgive me as I talk about the Trek rewrite yet again. But anyways, we'll get to that in a minute. So, she turns the crowd on Naysay pretty easily and effortlessly. Two things of interest. First, obviously a wizard without power, without their spells, is not going to be doing all that well against a crowd of people. But you notice he doesn't even try. Of course he doesn't. That's a crowd of children, of pony children, that he is trying to do this to protect. Why would he try to hurt them? If he tried to defend himself against that crowd, that would oust him. He wouldn't actually be a believer in his concept or cause. He would be just a power-hungry idiot. Which, they could have gone that way. But no, instead what they show is they do a very specific showcasing the fact that he really has been legit this whole time. And by that I mean he legitimately believes what he says. Doesn't make him better, but it does distinguish the kind of villainy that he is. So, they all lock him up. Cozy immediately takes away the artifact. And he's trying to get it back because what else is he going to do? So then they come in to help him. The Student 6. And they do. And Naysay is... Now, I'm going to talk about this more later. Just remember this moment, because what's happening is the monsters and evil things who are trying to steal the magic just came in and helped him. Yeah, this is a worldview crack right here. Credit to Naysay. Some people, when their worldview is cracked, deny. They double down. Naysay goes, and starts to reevaluate. And it's harder to do that than it sounds. So, he gets the artifact, which is barely working, by the way, so it's very clear it's only good for one trip. Goes, leaves, we won't see him until the end of the episode. Hang on, Act, I'm almost there, because the very next thing that happens is, we cut to Tirek. Alright, sorry, hang on. Give me a second, Act. So we cut to Tirek. You notice how someone pointed out that there were no sentience in Tartarus? In this episode, obviously Tirek is the exception, but in this episode we see the Chimera sisters, who can talk and speak and are very clearly sentient and sapient. It's okay, though, because the 6 of them are trapped. 7! Sorry, Spike. Tirek is not really known for his brain power, really. I know that's a weird way to say that, because he does know he has a great deal of knowledge about magic and how magic works. But that's kind of it. He's a little bit too hyper-specialized. I keep using D&D parallels. Tirek is a sorcerer who has all of those feats and all of those specializations that mean he can only cast evocation spells. So his fireballs are mean. But that's all he can do. That's like his shtick. And everything else, he's kind of useless. And that's more Tirek, whereas Starlight would be more of a multi-school sorcerer to continue the parallel. So Tirek knows magic very well, and he has a lot of raw magical power, and that's about it. So he pretty much immediately realized... Yeah, he wouldn't let him cook dinner. He's pretty much immediately realized that he's stuck here with the others. This then leads to Pinky deliberately being irritating. Now, I've spoken against that multiple times in the show, going all the way back to Season 1. But they do it right in two ways here. First, the most obvious, is that this is being done as a deliberate ploy on her in character in order to try and torture, let's call it what it is, Tyrek into submission. I can do this all day. But here's the really important thing. All eternity. Here's the really important thing, though. They don't actually linger on it too long. You remember that episode I don't remember the name of? Boy, that episode was the accordion, or not the accordion, the bagpipes episode, right? Remember that episode? One of my biggest complaints about that episode was that they just linger on the music for so long. So it's irritating to us, but it just keeps being irritating to us because they won't go away from it, right? Here, they only actually show us a single scene of her being irritating, and it lasts about 30 seconds. That's actually correct. That's exactly how you should do that. In fact, I mentioned this back then. I didn't know this would be coming up. I'm just bringing it up because, I do have the memory. But that's how you should do deliberately irritating. Don't push it on the audience too much. Just give us a snippet. Give us an insight so we see the irritation, so we can feel what it's going through, and then move on. And of course, this works immediately, and Tyrek immediately capitulates. Yeah, exactly, Linnarith. So, awesome. That works. Cool. Yeah, I kind of agree, Ross, but we'll cover that in a minute, I think. So then we go to Cozy Glow and the Cutie Mark Crusaders. Notice the Cutie Mark Crusaders are just like, hey, what's going on? And are actually being pretty legitimately deceptive and pretty good. In fact, they have a bit of a brain havery thing going on by just completely going along with the whole thing. Unfortunately for them, Cozy Glow has an excellent charisma stat and a very high deception score. So for those of you who don't play D&D, let me explain something to you. The deception score works both ways. You roll deception to deceive someone, but you also roll deception to see if you are being deceived. It's the same stat. And that makes sense, right? It's knowledge and understanding of how you can manipulate or be manipulated. So it makes so much sense that her entire gimmick, her huge shtick, is that manipulation, is that deception. Of course she would pick up on it, and of course she would go through it. Okay, that's fair, Loner. In some D&D versions, they actually split it up into multiple skills. I haven't played a version of D&D where it's 2 skills in, over 20 years. I don't know the exact number. It's like 23 years, something like that. But I just forgot to, Mr. Red, so that's whatever. So, in most versions of Tabletop, which I've played, there's 1 deception stat, because of course there is. So they get locked in a supply closet for their troubles. Okay. Cool. I'm with this entirely. This then leads to Cozy. This is a brilliant section here, because what ends up happening is she knows that there's this deception going on, and she manages to work around it. How many of you remember me pointing out that a rook was her cutie mark all the way back in the first episode she was introduced in? So there's 2 types of people who are really good at chess. The first type is the kind of person who can look at the board and mathematically practice out what's going to happen and do this and this and this and this and this, and basically say checkmate in 7 moves. The other kind, which is a different type of intellect, it's a different type of mindset, is the person who looks down at it, looks down at the board and says, okay, this, and they adapt on the fly constantly. So, for example, if you've ever seen professionals play chess versus professionals playing speed chess, this is these 2 different mentalities in a nutshell. I was much better at speed chess, by the way. I'm much more of an adapter when it comes to my mind. So, Cozy's the adapter. She's just rolling with this. As soon as she realized she was being deceived into a distraction, she's like, okay, they're going to rescue Starlight. No problem. I'll lock them in the closet, and then I'll go get the crew, and then I'll wait for just the right moment to be like, oh my gosh, and announce ourselves, oh my gosh, you're going to destroy the school? How could you? No. Because she had that plan worked out. What's interesting about this scene, very much so, is that she's clearly just making this up on the fly. And it is starting to show. The cracks are showing because she's dealing with issue after issue after issue. She's just still rolling with it. Now, quick cut back to Tartarus. This is something that I could probably spend an hour talking about. Don't worry, I'm not going to. I mean, it's lunchtime 20 minutes ago for me. We dragged on along today. Holy crap. But they borrow the magic of the animals which turns them back into ordinary animals. That's fascinating on many levels. I'm going to go ahead and admit right now, there's something I'm going to kind of ding this episode here for, is the fact that they don't have a, we redeemed the monsters, we brought them out of Tartarus moment, because that would be kind of awesome, and a good way to kind of, show that the whole jail thing we talked about for forever last time is wrong. But instead, what we do see is that they are now switching back to animal, and just, wow! Oh, that's brilliant! Because it means they all came from somewhere. It means that there is enough of the original animal there for them to revert to that when magic is removed from them. I wonder what would happen to a pony if magic was completely removed from them. Yeah, exactly, Lord Henneman. I want to see some of these monsters in Fluttershy's Sanctuary. You don't have to spend attention on it. Show them in the background. Have a scene where Fluttershy's talking to whoever about whatever the plot of the episode is, and we have the Sanctuary in the background. Show them there. Give us that background lore. Show that they're trying to redeem it. That would be awesome. And I'm going to be paying attention for that for Season 9, the last season here. But anyways. But the ideas and concepts, were they turned into that artificially? Was that just a magical confluence? Did Discord make it happen? There are so many possibilities of how that could work. But the other interesting thing, and this is what Ross has already mentioned, is that this means magic is a quantitative thing in this setting. Now, we've speculated on that before, but what I mean by that is you can measure magic, that you can quantify magic, you can contain magic, you can remove, separate, and reapply magical energy. And that has many interesting connotations, especially if friendship generates magic. Think about that for a second. Food for thought. Either way, so magic comes out of them, and yeah, if you pay attention, what might be true here is that we might actually have a clean energy source in this setting of Equestria. I mean, what's more clean than magic, right? and by that I mean what's more clean than friendship. Sorry, I meant to say friendship. I didn't mean to say magic. So they take the monsters. Dogs turn into 3 different dogs. That's fascinating. They use it. They open the door. Tyrek even throws a little bit what little tidbit of magic he still has. There you go. This then leads to them getting out, and, well, actually, no, what actually ends up happening is they're all taken in by the magic, and they're all tossed out to another universe, or wherever Tyrek comes from. And then the tree shows up. Now, the tree is quite literally below the school, as we've already demonstrated, and has already directly personally connected to the Student 6. And the Student 6 literally demonstrate friendship multiple times, including here, so none of this bothers me. This is, the wormhole aliens in Sacrifice of Angels. I'm not going to say specifics to avoid spoilers, but it's that situation. Even though it's a bit of a Deus Ex Machina, it's one that has been established, built up, and that piece has been put there so it can then be applied. It's not just out of nowhere, right? It's not your classical Deus Ex Machina where someone just shows up and says, it's all over. No, this works quite well, and I'm absolutely with it. Yeah, the tree's like, let me clarify this, Cozy. Let me show you how wrong you are. So they fix all this thing. Cool. All the magic goes back where it should. Tyrek gets smacked in the face, as he should be. The problem, and this is something that happens to Cozy, the problem here, I like the shot of Nase coming back, I already kind of mentioned that. The problem with charisma is that you can only lie so much. There's an old joke. I've actually seen this in several things, including Order of the Stick did this joke before, but I've seen this joke before that. It boils down to, if your deception stat, or whatever it is in standard D&D, is, plus 50 or something like that, then you can get away with absolutely outrageous lies. So, walk up and stab someone and say, don't worry, you weren't stabbed. And they're like, oh, okay, and they just go back to normal because they think they weren't stabbed. The problem is that doesn't actually work that way. That's nonsense. There is an actual limit to which deception can work. Now, it varies and it depends and blah, blah, blah. The long and the short of it is, at a certain point, deception stops working. Yeah, exactly. Persuasion is not mind control. That's why that's a joke, the aforementioned thing. Persuasion is not mind control. So as Cozy starts to try to lie, in the face of reality, it just doesn't work. Because reality trumps lies. At least it should. So these people see what's happening, and they're like, hold on a second. And she just completely loses all of her tools. And this is the wonderful 1-2 punch about charisma as the stat, as about the deception character. Because if everything you do is centered around doing that really, really high charisma and really, really high deception, the moment it falls apart, you are left with nothing else. You are hyper-specialized. And Cozy has nothing else going for her. She's not that much of a long-term thinker. She's not particularly wise. She is not strong, not agile, and not durable. All she has going for her is charisma, and the moment that one pillar is knocked away, she crumbles. You'll notice her mask just starts absolutely falling apart at the end of the episode, because she's lost everything, right? Do I think Cozy should have been redeemed? That's an interesting question. I am 95% certain we have not seen the end of Cozy, because Season 9, and also they bothered to show her in Tartarus talking to Tyrek. But, that being said, no, I don't think Cozy Glow should be redeemed, because she is a complete monster. The entire narrative point of a complete monster is that they are the type of character that is beyond redemption. That is actually kind of arguably the definition of that. We've talked about all the different villain types, but a complete monster isn't a type of villain. It's an additive, it's a modifier to a villain. A complete monster is someone who cannot be redeemed because they're a complete monster. Yes, exactly, S.A. Ross. Now, her punishment here is justified? That's an interesting question. I'm going to go ahead and go with no. But that's because they don't even try to redeem her. Now, that being said, she showed absolutely no... Let me put this way. Let's compare and contrast her to the villain who is redeemed in this story. Naysay. Naysay was a prude. Or not prude, it was rude. Sorry, the other rude. Ood word. Naysay was rude, ambitious, power grabby, irritating, frustrating. Oh yeah, and he was a complete bigot. But the moment Naysay was introduced to the fact that he might be wrong, he adapted. I mentioned that. He started going, hold on, really? And when reality was shoved into his face, he changed his mind on this. Cozy shows none of that. Even when everyone is on her. Everyone has turned on her and she has completely lost everything because of friendship. Her response is to rant about how stupid friendship is and how she can get more friends without any of that crap. That says a lot right there. That's someone who hasn't even considered that they might be wrong. And it's one of those wonderful things. I'm going to look this up. You're going to make me look this up. It's okay. This won't take me long because I'm pretty sure it's right here. Yep, I'm already there. Uyaka. So, I'm going to change the name here to Cozy Glow. Forgive me for quoting this. I think it's the second time I brought this up recently. I'm truly sorry, Cozy Glow. But redemption requires more than simply the execution of your duty, even if you follow that duty to the end. True redemption demands that you seek forgiveness for your past misdeeds, that you atone for the actions that caused them to turn away from you, that you even acknowledge that you could in fact be wrong. You have done none of this. Perhaps if you had more time, but then again, perhaps not. Redemption is a rare and special thing after all. It is not for everyone. Now, I am speaking mostly about how she's been portrayed in Season 8, but assuming she never shows up again, I'm willing to say right here that there is no redemption there. That there's not even the beginnings of redemption. That there's, you need that first step, you need that first brick in order to be able to walk that path, and it's not there. I wouldn't put her in Tartarus, but that's a different thing. I also wouldn't put her in Tartarus because Tyrek's there, but that's a different thing too. Either way, I want to talk about Naysay, and I want to talk about Star Trek Enterprise and the Star Trek rewrite. So for those of you not aware, in in Enterprise, in the actual show of Enterprise, Archer is pretty anti-Vulcan. So is Tucker. Tucker loses that as of like episode 4. It goes away almost immediately. Archer takes 4 seasons to get there. More like 3 seasons and some change. It's really badly done and really stupid and really terrible, mostly because it was never actually intended to be a character arc, and so the writers just bumbled it, and then the writer staff changed, and then the writer staff changed again, and so they tried to retcon all of that by making it into an arc in the last 2 episodes. So it's crap. But in the Trek rewrite, one of the things we're trying to make very clear, and this is something, again, as the primary writer of that, one of the things I've been trying to really focus on is that Archer is a bigot in ignorance. Now, this is something I've seen in real life, and I don't care if it exists in real life anyways, because this is the work of fiction, but the point is, the idea is that they are a bigot because of ignorance. That they don't, for lack of a better way to put it, really believe this. That they don't actually think this way. That they think that way because they don't know better. And when they are confronted with reality, they go, huh, and change because they now know better. Now, this is the arc that Archer's going to be going through in the Trek rewrite, spoilers. But this is also very clearly what's happening with Naysay here. The reason I brought up the Trek rewrite is we're going to do that across the entire first season. That's about 26 episodes. They try to do it in about 3 minutes in this episode, which obviously is a little bit lacking. I'm wondering, this is just pure speculation, I'm wondering if Maurice LaMarche was either not available or too expensive, and so they wanted, what was probably going to be a season 9 arc turned into a finale of season 8 arc, because they just, okay, wrap it up. Because it does wrap up a bit quickly. So I don't see it's getting a positive, for lack of a better way to put it. But I don't think I would give it a negative either, because Equestria is a better place than real life, and I can believe that someone like Naysay, who when confronted with reality, would change his mind. I mentioned before that he's a true believer, but what I didn't mention was what he was a true believer in, and I was actually thinking about that even now because I wasn't 100% sure. What I believed he was a true believer in was that he needed to protect the ponies, his people. And I know that's a strange thing to point out, but it's a more pro-us than it is anti-them, and there is a distinction between these two mentalities. They can look the same, they can cause the same damage and cause the same hurt. But there is a difference between I hate you versus I want to protect me. And the biggest difference is the pro-us thing can at least be turned into something positive, as we see with Chancellor Naysay. And yeah, I was going to say, this is actually something that comes up in Mass Effect. Cerberus, the good side of Cerberus, let me put it that way, is not anti-alien, they are pro-human. And there is a distinction. And then we end with Cozy and Tartarus going to make friends with Tirak. That's interesting. As I said before, and it is because of this scene, I believe with total certainty that at some point we are going to see more of both of them. So now we got to rate both episodes. Now let's just go and get this out of the way. I don't think these are purples. But if I could find, there we go. Part 1 is some brilliant setup, and really only has a couple of issues. So, I think I agree. Let's go ahead and make Part 1 a red. Let's just go ahead and codify that. I don't think it could be pulled up to purple, even if the 2 issues I have with it are fixed. There's just not that extra oomph it needs. 2, I think I'm going to go with orange on Part 2. It certainly follows through and does some good conclusionary stuff. But it doesn't follow through, it doesn't follow through as much as it needed to. It doesn't stick the landing as much as it needed to. The catch is, of course, Part 2 is still very well paced, very well acted, and very well presented, and that really does salvage a lot of what otherwise would merely be a good episode. So I think I'm comfortable saying that Part 2 is an above-average episode. Yeah, Cozy is probably dragging that up to above average by herself, if I'm being honest. She is scarily well written. How would I rate Cozy? Cozy's probably one of the more fascinating villains we've ever seen, because she is a Batman villain. I'm sorry, let me explain that a little bit. She is Batman as a villain. I know that sounds like a weird way to phrase that, and isn't actually a great way to phrase that, so let me walk that back a bit. There's a villain who's powerful. There's a villain who has an army. There's a villain who has tremendous resources. And then there's a villain who just manages to maneuver their way through people with none of those advantages. And that's the kind of villain that tends to stick with me, because A, it's a lot harder to write properly, and B, it can be very, very dangerous, because they can usually talk and maneuver around the superpowers around them. My favorite example of this is actually from StarCraft, Arcturus Mengsk. Arcturus Mengsk is a dude. By the time at which he became a villain, he had nothing going for him. All his fortune and all his political connections had been taken away from him. All that was left to him was his mind, his charisma, and the few people who were willing to follow him. And he turned that into the Dominion. And he was one of the biggest shakers and movers of the StarCraft setting, in a setting that includes the Zerg, the Protoss, and the freaking hybrids. Never mind the Xel'Naga. And still, Arcturus Mengsk was a big mover and shaper of that setting. I tend to love that kind of villain if it's not obvious. But you get the idea. And yeah, the Joker, when he's written well, is another good example of this type of thing, which isn't always. Joker's writing varies a lot. But you get the idea. That's why I say Batman villain. Not because of the Joker, but because Batman, while he has a lot of resources and all that at disposal, what Batman really has going for him is himself. And that's kind of it. One of my favorite little tidbits, it was a Batman and Superman comic. I forget what that line was called. And they go to Apocalypse, the planet. And Soups does what he does best and just smashes through and beats up tons of things and is making a big noise. And then Batman is off doing something. And then when they finally confront Darkseid and say, hey, get the hell out of here. Batman says, so I just planted a whole bunch of bombs on these core elements of your planet that I looked at earlier. These are the key crucial points. So if these bombs go off, the whole planet's going to self-destruct and you're going to lose it. You'll live, of course, Darkseid, but you're going to lose your whole planet. Or you could give us what we want. I love that scene, by the way. It is worth noting, though, that even in that scene, and this is kind of an interesting thing in its own right, Bats could only really do that if Soups was with him. Now, you notice what I just said, right? Bats was only able to accomplish that because he had the powered person with him working alongside him, basically being the distraction, giving him the time he needed to accomplish that. He couldn't have done that by himself. So now Cozy Glow is with Tyrek. Worse is an interesting word, Ross. I think what she was going to do was going to be more devastating, but I don't think I'd call that worse. It's interesting. So, either way, that's actually what I got. So, yeah, next time we're going to go ahead and cover Season 9. One season left. Holy crap. This is going to be interesting. I don't know anything about Season 9 at all. I don't even know what thumbnail to make. I suppose we'll figure it out soon enough. Maybe like a conclusory thumbnail? I don't know. I'll figure out something. Because I noticed right now, because I had to do this to buy the episodes, is the first two episodes, which we'll be covering next week, are Beginning of the End Part 1 and Beginning of the End Part 2. And as usual, I'm not looking at the summary. But that's an interesting way to start your season. Either way, I'm going to go deal with some stuff and get some work done. I will see the rest of you, hopefully, Tuesday morning for more Parasite Eve.